your proud superintendent for Hutto ISD. Tonight, as we talk about our instructional and safety plan for returning to the 2020-21 school year, takes a whole team effort. So a lot of this work, I wish I could tell you that I'm going to know the answer to all of your questions this evening. It takes an entire team effort. So I want to introduce the team that's assisting me with the table talk this evening. So in the boardroom with me, off to my right side, you can't see him, our Director of Communications and Community Relations, Mr. Todd Robinson. He's the one letting all our folks into the Zoom meeting. Right behind me to my right is Henry Gideon. He is our Assistant Superintendent for Operations, and he oversees everything with operations and primarily safety. So he's going to be fielding a lot of our questions with regard to safety. Right behind me to my left is Coach Brad LaPlante, our Director of Athletics. We had our middle school table talk last night, and I had my monthly meeting with him today, and I said, we had a lot of questions about athletics. It might be a good idea for you to join us this evening. So he's here to try and address some of those questions as well. You can't see her. I also have my administrative assistant, Linda Renaga, here today. And then on the screen, we have Dr. Robert Sermani. He's the Associate Superintendent for Instruction and Innovation. Glad to have him on board. He's going to tackle a lot of the questions with regard to instruction, schedules, what the day is going to look like for our high school kids. And then we have our one and only high school principal, Mr. Roy Christian. He's there tuning in from his office. And I don't know if we have Mr. Drew McConaughey online. He's our principal for the River Horse Academy as well. And so our principals are listening in to get a good feel for what's happening with our parents. So for tonight, we're going to dedicate an hour to our table talk. We'll try to tackle all of the questions in that hour. If we missed any of them, we promise we're going to get to them. We're going to ask you to stay muted. So that, and we're going to utilize the chat feature tonight so that you can type in your questions or your comments regarding our instructional and safety plan for returning 2020-2021. That's a tongue twister here. I'm just going to say 2021. So if you like, let's start out with just a brief overview of where we are today, Thursday, August 6th. So we rolled out an instructional safety plan on July 2nd. We've been adjusting and modifying that plan all through the summer. The plan right now is to begin virtual instruction beginning Tuesday, August the 18th, 100% virtual for the entire district through Friday, September 4th. On Friday, August the 20th, we're going to take an assessment of what is going on with our health conditions in the county and surrounding areas, make a determination of whether or not we're going to extend virtual instruction beyond September 4th, or go ahead and open and be ready to receive students in person on Tuesday, September 8th. So for our families who have selected virtual instruction, regardless of the date we come back to in-person instruction, your virtual instruction will continue seamlessly regardless of that in-person start date. And obviously, for our students who have selected in-person, we'll get going as soon as we can, hopefully on September the 4th. This decision is not made in isolation. Our executive team collaborates with our local health officials, and we take a good reading of what's happening in our county. Now, while Hutto ISD is in Williamson County, we're in Williamson County 100%, we also have to take into account our neighboring school districts and our neighboring county, which is Travis County. And obviously, when you look at our staff, only about 1/3 of our staff actually live in Hutto. We have 2/3 of our staff that come from outside of Hutto. So obviously, it's not just looking at what's happening here. We have to take into consideration what is occurring around us. So you've had several months. Oh, well, not several months. You've had several weeks to stay with us with our communications. You've read the plan. We know it's long. What questions do you have right now regarding virtual instruction or returning to school in person on September the 8th? What can we alleviate for you? What can we clarify for you during our time together? So our first question, if our student is sent home to quarantine because of exposure, does the sibling or siblings have to quarantine also? No. If your child is sent home to quarantine, the other siblings do not have to quarantine unless your child ends up displaying signs of COVID and they end up testing positive for COVID, then obviously then the whole family would have to quarantine. But if your child is sent home because of a condition at school, the rest of the family would not have to quarantine. Can we still opt out for 100% virtual if we didn't complete the survey before? Unfortunately, no, I'm sorry. The survey closed on Monday, and we have exactly 2 weeks, not even that. We have this week and a couple of days to schedule students accordingly. So we've got to be able to, we've got to have a break off day in order to get our children scheduled so that we can have meet the teacher nights, and so teachers will know who's going to be on their roster and can begin planning accordingly for their students. Excuse me. The next date for making a selection of whether you want to go virtual or in person is going to be 2 weeks before the end of the grading period. So that will be sometime in September. The next parent update that we send out will have those dates of when you can let us know about making a change with regard to the instructional setting. The next question, will wearing a mask be enforced during the passing period? Yes, most definitely. And that has to be without exception. One of the commitments that students are making by coming to school in person is that they will wear their mask anytime they're in transition, anytime they're around other students, anytime we are not going to be able to maintain a consistent 6-foot distance. So all of our adults will wear their masks. We expect all students to wear their masks. And that'll be part of that first day orientation where we talk about just overall safety, not just with regard to the mask, but overall sanitation and cleanliness and how we all have to do our part in order to stay safe. Let me go back. Okay. How would absences or doctor's appointments need to be reported? So the reporting is no, go ahead, Dr. Samani.
Well, I was just going to say the reporting process doesn't change much during the virtual environment, whether you've opted into the virtual environment or during these first few weeks. You just send in by email or phone to let the school know that the person's, your child's going to be absent, and you send in your doctor's note as normal. The only big difference is that because of the virtual environment, TEA is going to allow us to count you present if you do end up doing your classwork later on in the day or even that evening. We can actually code you as present even though you were gone for some period during the school hours. So really, there's not much of a difference in reporting that.
Okay. Will you tackle the next one? What electives will be available virtually for high school students?
And to answer that, we have to distinguish between the two groups of students. You have one group of students who opted for virtual instruction, and you have the other group of students who opted for in-person instruction, who are now virtual for the first 3 weeks, because the experience is going to be a little bit different. And the reason why it's going to be different, if you can imagine when we have in-person instruction, let's just use advanced robotics and manufacturing as an example. Advanced robotics and manufacturing, there's only one teacher and one class where that's done. And when we have in-person instruction, of course, that person has students in front of them, and they don't have a way of monitoring the other students who might be virtual. So that's a class, as an example, that might not be able to be offered virtually. And I wanted to say that because when everybody is in a virtual environment during the first 3 weeks, all the elective teachers, of course, don't have students in front of them, so they are going to be interacting with their students. So if you're a person that wanted in-person instruction, When you get your schedule, you're going to have all those electives that you signed up for. Now, obviously, athletics won't look the same because we're not going to have you videoing yourself running along the track, but you will have interaction with your coaches. On the other side, though, if you opted for virtual learning, we were limited as to what we can offer. I hesitate to try to tell you which courses exactly, because every day I'm finding out, or we're finding out courses, hey, we found a way to offer this course virtually, and hence some of the work that the high school is doing to try to schedule students. I can tell you that there are going to be some courses offered through a program called Edgenuity. And I'll also tell you, if students opt for the virtual, when they do opt to come back, if they do, and you don't have to, but if you do, we're going to save your schedule and try to get you back into the classes that you originally wanted to get before we had a pandemic. And so there will be that opportunity. For example, if you're in 6 weeks in virtual instruction and you were in athletics, but you couldn't do athletics class period virtually because your coaches are coaching other students, when you come back to us, we're going to put you back in that athletics period when you come back to in person. So I'll leave it at that. I'm going to leave the details for the high school to begin to communicate as they begin to send out schedules early next week.
What about extracurricular activities? Those will still be available for our students, whether you selected in person or virtual. Students have the option of coming to the extracurricular practices that are held before school and after school. The only thing is that students are not able, obviously, because they've selected virtual instruction, they cannot stay for that particular extracurricular class during the day. So if they come to practice in the morning, they have to be picked up between 8 and 8:30 before school starts. And of course, if they're coming after school, they cannot arrive until dismissal until after 4 o'clock.
Dr. Thomas.
Yes, sir.
Just on that previous question for Dr. Samani had answered, our goal to have schedules live for students and parents to be able to see is going to be August 12th. So
Okay.
the counselors are working feverishly to get everything done by the end of the day on August 11th. So first thing on August 12th, those schedules will go live so that everyone will get to see what they've been scheduled into.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's a $1 million question. You get the prize. Thank you. Will parents that choose virtual be able to adjust their child's schedule to opt out of electives for this semester? And once again, like Mr. Christian said, the schedules will go live on August the 12th. You'll be able to communicate with counselors. Options will be limited as far as schedule changes, but I know that they will work with you as best they can. You can opt out for electives, but remember, if they're required for graduation, it just may set you back a little, but you'll have room. Obviously, if you're a sophomore, you're a freshman, you'll have room in your schedule to try and make up some of those electives. So I think you just need to have a conversation with your counselor and really look at your graduation plan and what is needed for your child. All right, what are the current numbers or percentages of in-person versus virtual? As of Monday, we had 42% of our families selecting virtual instruction and 58% selecting in-person instruction. So almost half, not quite. If students forget their masks at home, will we be providing them one? Yes, we will have masks at school. Now, we have masks for our staff and we have masks for our teachers. And obviously right now we have about 56,000 masks. However, if you do the math, with 8,500 kids and 1,100 employees, if we said, well, you could have a mask every day, we would only have enough masks to make it through about 6 days of school if no one brought one from home. But yes, if someone forgets theirs, there will be a mask for them. We're not going to keep a child from coming to school if they forgot their mask. But we also know that people want to personalize them and have fun with their masks. So there's an opportunity to express some individuality. Do students have to be online all the time during school hours? No, not at all. As a matter of fact, the high school program is asynchronous. There will be synchronous times where kids are required to be online with their teacher. I think you're going to find that some of the freshman classes will have more required face-to-face time with the teacher, but a child won't be in front of the computer for 7 hours at one time. So Dr. Sermani, I know you probably have a few more details about that.
The only thing I'll add to that is that when you see your schedules, they'll look very familiar. We chose to keep the familiar formatting, so there's class periods, and really it becomes kind of a guide for teachers to know when certain groups of students are available to assign class meetings, or if there is no class meeting assigned during that time, it becomes time for that student to complete whatever work for that math period, or really if they've finished their math, they can move on to something else if they want. They don't have a synchronous in-person class time. So no, they won't be online all the time. There's definitely going to be space for kids to be working independently. And if students complete all their work independently, they don't have anything until their next class period. I will just add that it's going to be different than the spring. So there's going to be more assignments than was in the spring. So I don't want anyone to be under that impression. There's also going to be more in-person check-in points than you saw in the spring as well.
Okay, thank you. What are the parents' reporting requirements, excuse me, to the campus should our child or family member be diagnosed with COVID? Your contact person for reporting a case is your school nurse. So that's the person that you contact, and then they'll take you through some reporting requirements that they have to do themselves. They'll guide you from that point. But anything having to do with COVID-19 and a diagnosis, your first point of contact is your school nurse. Will the school day be normal length for in-person attendees? Yes, just like always. If I want to change a course, if you want to change a course, when should you do it? Mr. Christian, you want to answer that one?
Okay, if you have a course that, you know, your counselor is going to call because if there's courses that you wanted to take that we can't offer, the counselors are right now, they're calling parents and calling students to see what they want to choose from the ones that are available. So, you know, our first goal is to be sure that we get everything that's needed for graduation. Then we want to be sure that you get everything that, you know, something that you want to get done. So get in conversation with your counselor. And as soon as you see those schedules go live, that's, you know, you should have talked to counselor already, but if you haven't, get in contact with them. The sooner we get it taken care of, the better off we're going to be.
Okay, great, thank you. The next question, how are you limiting the number of kids in the hallway during passing period? So when we do the math, when you've got 42% of the kids, and it was pretty even, and although not exact on every campus, it was pretty even district-wide. So at the high school, for example, you already have 800 to 900 fewer kids in the hallways. So passing periods right now on August the 6th, I can tell you that the schedule is the high school schedule that was in place last year. The number of kids in the hallway will be significantly less than we had last year. But part of the expectation is at any time that we're in transition, that we're in movement, we cannot maintain that consistent distance from others, we will be masked up. Students will also be required to sanitize before they go into their next class period. They'll be required to sanitize when they leave. They're going to be required to sanitize their desk surface. So all of those little procedures that are occurring throughout within the campus will be communicated to the kids on the very first day.
And I do believe, Dr. Thomas, one thing at the high school level, and Mr. Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, we did add a minute or so to the passing periods in order to ensure that we don't get any bunching up anywhere in particular areas, or rather, if we have to bunch up, we spread them out at those points and they're not going to be late to class. So we do have a slightly adjusted bell schedule. There's also a few extra minutes in the morning and in the afternoon in order to ensure we can get kids out and in more safely.
Okay.
We adjust at the beginning of the day just a little bit. You know, it's not going to make any real huge difference with anything. At the end of the day, it's going to be the exact same time. But like Dr. Samani said, we're trying to add a little bit of extra time on our class periods without shortening the length of the class periods, so that students can get to where they're supposed to be and not have to run down the hallway bumping into people to try to get where that is. And so we want them to be able to get where they need to get safely, and 6 minutes is where we're going to be. And I think that's going to be enough time for them to get where they need to get.
Okay, thank you. For the first day of class, do parents have to be there, meaning during the first day of the virtual day? I think if you're, meaning the first day of the virtual day, you don't, if your child is, if you normally by this age, children know how to log on and off. All instructions are going to be sent out, obviously, through the student's email address. They'll also be sent out to parents in case parents need to assist the students, but that's part of the preparation right down. Once all the class schedules have been determined, then kids are going to start receiving communication directly from their teachers. And there'll be specific instructions that very first day, not so much about the content, but how are we going to access our work? How are we going to turn in work? How will it be graded? All of those logistical things, all of those burning questions that kids have, we're going to tackle that very first day. And I'm sure that very first week as teachers receive new students, because just like any normal school year, there's always schedule changes that first week of school. If we have elected for my child to attend in person, whenever the virtual period is over, but have a huge change of heart due to circumstances, will we be able to continue to change and continue the virtual only approach? Unfortunately, not at this time. So what is happening right now in our schools, there are parallel schedules taking place. You have schedules for virtual learning students and schedules for in-person students. And so once that virtual period is over and we begin the in-person, students will need to continue, will need to come to campus so that they can see their teachers. So that virtual rollout of instruction will cease, and now you have the in-person instruction with that teacher. There will be an opportunity to change, again, like I said, 2 weeks before the end of that grading period. Will teachers actually conduct classes for the virtual students instead of giving them assignments to complete? Yes, they will. And once again, a very different scenario, very different platform from what we had in the spring. Remember, we had to change our entire delivery system from 1 week to the next over a spring break period. Some of our folks were really tech savvy and they were able to adjust almost immediately. Others, it took us a little while longer. And so I think you're going to see a complete 100% change in the delivery and in the quality and the content and just in the rigor of what will roll out with virtual instruction. And I know Dr. Sermani will probably want to add some more to that.
Yes, and the only piece I was going to add is one of the things we learned in the spring was some subjects and some age levels need more structure than others. And so it's not going to be the same in every subject and every grade level. For example, freshman algebra, they're probably going to see a lot of their teacher. A senior level physics or physics 2, they may not see their teacher as much. Well, actually, AP physics, they might. But there are some senior level classes that we found that the students can operate just fine with a couple of touch points a week. So you'll see some variance, but it's certainly going to be overall much more than what we saw in the spring.
Yeah. All right, thank you. How many positive cases will you need to shut down the school? Anything above 10% of the student and staff population, once you exceed that 10% threshold, then the entire school needs to be shut down for a deep clean before students are allowed back in. And that at a high school, it could be anywhere from 5 to 10 days before we would allow the kids back into the building. Will the staff be required to test on a regular basis? No, no one is required to test right now unless there's specific medical conditions that warrant a test. So as a matter of fact, we were on a call this afternoon with the Williamson County Health Authorities, and that was one of the questions that one of the superintendents asked about one, just having enough tests available. If we wanted to test all of our staff, that was the question, is there availability to do that? And unfortunately there isn't. And those tests are not always, they're going to, obviously it's a test of that point in time. And you may not be exhibiting the symptoms and not test positive and still be a carrier. So they're not always one of the ways to ensure that people can come back into a building. There's other factors you have to consider. They have to be symptom-free, and obviously they have to have a doctor's clearance that they've been quarantined and that they've allowed full time period for the virus to manifest itself and then not exhibit any more symptoms. So it's a little more complicated than just having your staff test. We chose virtual learning for our child. Will this affect his credits? It should not. Dr. Sermani, go ahead.
No, one of the reasons why the counselors are taking such care in building these schedules is we have to make sure that a student is able to accomplish whatever graduation plan they have or whatever goals they have. And given that we have to navigate what can we do virtually, it takes a student by student look. So to answer your question in two ways, it won't affect your graduation credits because we're going to work with you to make sure that student is still on the right path and getting the credits they need. Likewise, any class that you're in a virtual environment, it is a high school credit class. You're gonna have the same level of rigor as the in-person kids in order to make sure we can give you a for that. Regardless of whether you're virtual or not, you'll be getting the same credit anybody else would if they were in person.
Do you have enough substitutes when staff members are out? What will happen if subs are not available to cover a class, virtual or in person? That is a huge worry. I'm just going to be honest, transparent. That is a huge concern for us as administrators. I can tell you that one of the proactive things that we're going to do, we're allowing the high school to hire 4 substitutes from day one. That there's always on a daily basis that there's 4 subs available on campus, whether there's a quote a vacancy or not that day, because you never know what could happen in the course of that day, that you have to isolate a staff member who begins to exhibit signs or just that there is an emergency of some sort. So for the high school, they'll have 4 permanent subs on campus each and every day from here until spring. One of the adjustments that we've made with regard to teachers being out, if teachers can continue that remote instruction from home, for example, we have to quarantine an entire class or entire section of classes. If the teachers can continue to deliver that instruction from home, then we're going to do that so that there is no loss for the teachers or for the kids. While the coaches have communicated that students would not be able to get in their regularly selected class concerning an athletic class.
So I believe that was for a virtual learner who chose to come back and do face-to-face learning. And we substituted in a 4th period athletic class for virtual to be a virtual PE. Now they come back to face-to-face learning. Will they be able to come back into the athletics class? And yes, they will be able to. Dr. Sermani alluded to that earlier.
Yes.
And that has been a change. Some of the UIL and TEA guidance early on said we may not be able to do that, but we can do that, yes.
Yes, yes. So again, if your child starts out virtually and you decide that you want to bring them back to in-person and they were in athletics, we will accommodate that athletic class period in their schedule. If we have opted to do virtual learning, how many weeks will you be allowed to remain in virtual learning before being allowed to return to in-person learning? So once again, we ask that whatever setting you've selected, that you remain in that setting for a grading period. So for at least 6 weeks. So if you start out virtual and you decide you want to come in person, you will notify us 2 weeks before the end of that grading period that you want to make a change. Because that's how long we need to make adjustments in schedule changes and also trying to even out our class loads. So the next parent update will have those specific dates. Obviously, we could go to the calendar and calculate back, but it's probably best if we designate a specific day and time for parents to give us that information. Can a student taking some of these classes that cannot be offered virtually select other classes that they can take virtually? Yes, and I think that just takes a conversation with your counselor to see what other classes are available through our Edgenuity program. The company has been expanding their course offerings, so there could be something there that you could substitute or select. Yes. What about start dates when it comes to athletics, baseball, football? Coach LaPlante?
Well, currently right now, our 9th through 12th graders are still weightlifting and they're doing sports skills. And I think 7 sports are doing that. When we get into the start of school, that will still be able to do so on the August 18th start date, before and after school, after the 8 to 4 hours. When you get into Labor Day, that will be the start of volleyball and football. And some of those dates will be still coming out yet this week as far as schedules. That's the practice start. But our DEC, the District Executive Committee, made up of superintendents, athletic directors, principals, those people will be meeting next week, the Hutto, Round Rock, and Leander group. And then you'll hopefully be seeing some schedules coming out that are official. We know some of our other competitors have put some of those out and they just put subject to change on it, but we've kind of held off on that when they are official next week. There will be some maybe more overlapping of the football and boys basketball or the volleyball and girls basketball seasons. Our head coaches were having meetings about that because we want to have multi-sport athletes within our district winning and having fun with their teammates in more than one sport. So we will make some accommodations and change some tryout dates for that. Some other changes that might take place might be a virtual parent meeting leading up to the start of the season. But all those updates, parents, if you want to get on the Team Band app, our communications, go ahead and do so. If you're not on the Band app, to get some of those communications, just go ahead and email the sports-specific head coach.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Christian, can you tackle this one? How is lunch going to be at the high school?
We are going to go ahead, and one big change that we're going to be doing is we're going to be allowing juniors to leave campus for lunch if they so choose. In addition to that, for our spacing, we're going to be, all students are going to be required to sit on the same side of the table. We're going to be skipping seats in.
Rosa,
Uh-oh.
we lost you.
Mr. Christian, we lost you. Okay, did everybody else freeze? Or was it just him?
I think it's just him.
Okay, all right, so we'll come back to that question as soon as we can unfreeze Mr. Christian. So Dr. Shamani, do you know the answer to this one? You mentioned that in person, oh, you froze out, Mr. Christian.
I think I'm back, so let me walk to someplace that has better internet.
Okay.
So how far did y'all get with me?
Just the juniors leaving campus,
The juniors leaving campus.
and we lost you again.
Mr. Christian's bandwidth is low. Okay, we'll come back. So you mentioned that in-person instruction selection was at 58%. Is that a total district number? Yes. What is the percent of in-person instruction for high school only? Do you happen to know those numbers, Dr. Sramani?
I don't, but you were right in that it was pretty evenly spread. So the exact, it's 42.7%. I only know it's 42.7% because I was actually just calculating it a couple hours ago.
Okay.
But it looked about the same at every campus, give a few percentage points more here, a few percentage points less there. So it's going to be right around that 40% mark.
Okay.
Actually, we were taking a look at it, and it was a little bit less for high school. I think we were sitting at just a little bit over 800.
And what?
800 students.
800 students going virtual?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So are you back with us? Do you want to talk about lunch again? It's giving me a message that your bandwidth is low.
Okay, I can hear y'all, but I can't see you. Anyway, okay, with lunch, can y'all still hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. With lunch, what we're doing is, again, we're allowing juniors to leave off campus. So that decreases with our juniors and seniors both leaving campus.
Okay. I tell you what, Mr. Christian, will you type in your answer in the chat box? And I think that'll, then the parents can read it from there. That would be great. But he did say, in case you missed it, juniors and seniors will be, if you can type in your answer in the chat box, I think that will be better. Okay, the next question, how are GPAs factored in with virtual learning as opposed to in-person learning? And how will the last spring semester be factored into our child's current GPA? So there is no difference. All the grading policies apply evenly to, you got it? Okay. Grading policies are the same whether you're in person or you're in virtual learning. So there will be no difference in the GPAs. Now, the last spring semester, the child's GPA, because it was in a pass-fail, Mr. Serrano, believe those classes are being factored, correct?
I believe the board resolution said no, that they're not factored in. They were for credit.
Credit only, yes. So the GPA, the last GPA numbers we had were as of December, the end of the first semester for the 2019-20 school year. But this coming school year, GPAs come back. Like I said, there's no change in the grading policies or how those will be applied. What if teachers change classes instead of students? Would it be less traffic? Yes, and you know, that would be, I wish that we were able to do that. But with so many students, when you've got over 2,000 students and every student has a unique schedule, most kids don't follow the same schedule where you could just rotate, where you could rotate the teachers in. So that's part of the challenge with the high school is that every student schedule is so unique. You have very few students that have the same identical schedule where you could keep the kids in cohorts and move teachers in. It becomes quite challenging. Yes, what are the start dates when it comes to athletics, baseball, football? I think you answered that, but you want to just one more time, the start dates would be September 8th?
September 7th.
Oh, September 7th.
Volleyball and football, yes.
Yes. So volleyball and football will start their seasons on September 7th, Labor Day. How are you limiting massive exposure? Example, a child in first period is tested positive. Everyone in all of their classes are exposed. Then every child in their classes are exposed, including the teachers. So yes, that is part of the challenge. But when a child tests positive, there is a specific contact tracing process that's applied. So just because you were in the same class with the child, it's all about how long and how closely you maintain contact with that person. So you need to, for all of the parents listening in, anytime that there is a positive case on a campus, on any campus in the district, every parent and every faculty member will be notified. They'll receive one massive communication letting you know that there was a positive test case. If your child was compromised in any way, you're going to receive a second communication about precautions that you need to take for your particular child. So it's important that we have a specific process that we're going to follow for communicating with parents and letting them know about what's happening to the health conditions on their campus. and also contacting you directly if you need to take extra care for your child. But there's a specific contact tracing process that we follow. How is social distancing going to be handled on the buses, Mr. Gideon?
And I think it's also for field trips. The design of the routes this year will be based on 2 students to a seat. Because we can't really social distance on school buses, the students will be required to wear their face masks before they board the school bus. The bus driver will be wearing personal protective equipment, face mask, as well as a face shield. We will have hand sanitizer for students to use when they onboard the bus. Then they will go to assigned seating, which is not that dissimilar to what we always traditionally do. It is very important to keep a manifest of what students are riding where, and we will try to maintain order on the bus as far as how we load and unload, and try to work with the students to enter and exit the bus in an orderly fashion, and they do a good job, especially our secondary students. So it's 2 to a seat. And we probably will have to back up our current routing with some additional runs because even though it's not an issue at secondary, at our elementary campuses, we have scheduled buses 3 to a seat.
Similarly, seats, so they're always sitting next to.
Yeah, 2 assigned seats. And we also, for contact tracing, we know who sits where with which individuals on the school bus. Similarly, the same sort of COVID guidelines will apply with our field trips, whether they're co-curricular or extracurricular activities. We may have a little more flexibility with our extracurricular travel, depending on what group is being transported. But again, the same basic COVID guidelines, which we're following not only TEA, but the Texas Association of Pupil Transportation to safely carry your children to and from school. Likewise, we will use the same sort of tools in the toolkit to sanitize the school bus. As you may be aware from reading some of the materials we've sent before, we use traditional sanitizing techniques and clean our buses on a daily basis. We will increase the frequency to include the use of these electrostatic wands that we've mentioned in the past, to also include certain types of sanitizers, one being a quaternary style cleaner. And we've tried to promulgate that message, throughout this whole process. So if you have any questions further, we will certainly try to bring that through to you through our parent communications, or you can email us or our transportation director. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gideon. Will classes be set up with desks 6 feet apart? This information stated that it will be the staff's decision on whether they will have students wear the mask in class or not. Will this rule change if needed? All right, so yes, we are doing everything possible to set our desks 6 feet apart in classrooms. We're also asking our teachers to take any unnecessary furniture out of the classroom so that we can utilize every square inch. We're going to allow, we've always had a strict rule about keeping all classroom doors locked for obviously safety reasons. We're going to have to relax that. This is why coming back, our schools will be in lock out, meaning all exterior doors are completely locked and absolutely no visitors are allowed on campus to maintain that tight security. Because there could be instances where a teacher has to utilize part of the hallway space to create some additional space. We're also going to use the hallways or rooms next door, rooms that are not being in use. We may have to separate kids in that way. Teachers may have to keep the kids together, at which time if we cannot socially distance and we cannot separate the kids, this is why the instructions say that the teacher has authority to ask kids to mask up. So if we cannot separate, the teacher may leave the kids in the classroom and say, all right, she's going to give that direct instruction, that direct lesson. And then if she has the ability to separate the kids into 2 rooms, she may say after she gives her instruction, she may leave one half of the class in one room, put the other half in the other room, separate the kids, they can remove their masks and the teacher can go back and forth. or we can bring in some additional staff to help monitor the other class. So I think in most cases, we'll be able to separate the kids. When we can't, I want parents to know there is a possibility that for a class period, if we can't spill out enough into the hallway, if we can't utilize another classroom, if we can't spread out enough for that class period, for those 45, 50 minutes, the students may have to leave their masks on because we cannot socially distance safely and stay apart for that entire time. But we do hope that that's not going to be the case for the entire day, but that is something that is a possibility, and we want to be transparent about that. To continue with the buses, how is social distancing? Oh, I think we addressed that one. Okay. Given that some parents prefer students to learn in person, will there be regular check-ins with parents to notify us of changes being implemented? Yes, sir. So right now, our checkpoint is Friday, August 20th. If we're able to make a decision by that day, you'll get a notification that morning. If not, first thing the following Friday. But our goal is to give parents at least a 2-week notice to let you know if there's going to be a change to the current schedule. So right now, again, we're 100% virtual from August 18th to Friday, September 4th. And we're planning to return to in-person on Tuesday, September 8th after Labor Day. If we extend virtual learning, we will notify you by that August 20th checkpoint date. So can my student do virtual the entire school year without actually attending in person? Yes, ma'am. So for this year, students may select to do virtual all year long. That's been part of the commissioner's ruling. I think we talked about lunch. I think, did Mr. Christian insert his comment about how lunch will work? Yes?
Yes, I did.
Yes,
Okay.
you scroll down.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I think the parent next wanted to clarify. So yeah, all routes, whether they're elementary or high school or middle school routes, will have no more than 2 children per seat.
Mm-hmm.
And we will sanitize before and after every route, which those drivers do that already, but we will, again, as I mentioned before, we have some other tools in the toolkit to do some sanitizing, but just to increase the enhanced opportunities to keep our buses clean and sanitized, we're going to increase the frequency of the sanitation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just at the end of the day.
Can we be contacted by email as well as phone call when it comes to the schedules? Yes, we can ask our campus to send out a robocall just for the high school students to let you know that the schedules will be live on August the 12th. Yes, we can do both. Can you go over again about if we want to keep virtual classes, can I choose that now and how? So if you have already selected, so the selection window for virtual learning was from July 6th to August 3rd. If you selected virtual learning and you want to stay in virtual learning all year long, you don't need to do anything else. You'll just continue with that virtual learning schedule. If you want to change from virtual to in-person or from in-person to virtual, you'll need to let us know 2 weeks before the end of the first grading period. And we'll send out those specific dates in the next parent update. And then we'll also have them posted on the website. How will UIL games be handled as far as fans? Coach LaPlante, we're actually talking about that very topic today. And we're still in the process of working through all the logistics. But we are going to give our students for example, at a football game, UIL is restricting admittance to only 50% of the capacity of a gym or a football field, a baseball field, wherever we're going to have an event. We can only allow 50% capacity. So what we're going to do is take care of our children first. So for example, at a football game, the band, the cheerleaders, the football players, the high steppers, the kids who do the health and safety for the football team. Any child involved with that event, they're going to get tickets first. And how many? We're still working on that because we've got to work on that capacity. But before we sell tickets to the public, we're going to take care of the kids' parents first. And if you'll just give us another week or two, we're working through those logistics about how fans will be able to attend games. You want to add anything?
I guess the other thing to know is we may end up going to a cashless system for all of our contests where everything will be purchased online. And if and when that is made, we will certainly get those links and get the information out. It's not only our families that are involved with the teams, but also the general public. We will have to put a row in between people who are seating. So every other row will have the ability to have fans. Now, if a family of 4 wants to sit together, that's fine. A single ticket holder can sit by themselves and socially distance. You will wear a mask inside any of our venues for UIL athletics. And then concessions will all be prepackaged items. There's also an app called Fan Food that we may be using to cut down the lines, and you would order from an app from your seat and you would get a message when your food is ready. So a lot of behind the scene things that we hope to have a great plan ready for you in the upcoming weeks.
Okay. Yeah, great question. Just hang tight with us, and as soon as we work out all those logistics, we will get a plan out to you. What's going to happen to students with dual credit classes? Dr. Sermani, transportation classes in general?
Well, right now, Temple College has already announced they're going fully virtual. So all the students taking Temple College courses will be interacting with their professors through a virtual environment. And that's how that's going to be taken care of. If you are an in-person student and Temple College remains virtual, we're going to be setting up a place for you at the high school where you can do your virtual classes with Temple College while you're physically on campus during those time periods. I'm in contact with the, not just the president, but the person who oversees the UCheck facility for Temple College. And so whenever they make a change, they ask us long beforehand, so we'll know if they change out of that virtual environment, and we'll be able to communicate that out as well. So there's no transportation needed at this time back to and from UCheck.
Okay. You want to do the next one too?
Sure. Accommodations in a virtual learning environment. Obviously, for students with disabilities or students getting special education services, it's very individualized. And so if anyone's asking for individual, certainly you want to contact your campus. I would wait till next week because they're just now getting case management loads. And so next week you'll get an individual who will be working with your individual child. I could tell you some more general accommodations. We're not working on, they exist. There's some accommodations that work really nicely in a virtual environment. It's really just a question of having them where a student can reach them. For example, if you have a student who has a learning disability in reading, for example, just teaching a child how to use text-to-speech features is huge because everything becomes an oral accommodation for that student. So there's a number of workarounds that we've learned, that we've worked on, that are ready to go. But again, of course, it just depends on each individual student. And finally, of course, every student has a case manager if you're in special education. And so that case manager will be touching base with that student on a regular synchronous, in-person, virtual, to make sure that that student is keeping up with the work, or if they need extra help or individualized tutoring.
Okay, great, thank you. Does cheer have the same rule as athletics as far as participation? Yes. Cheer, like any other sport and like any other extracurricular activity, the same guidelines. There's no difference. Coach, they couldn't hear you last time.
I'll get my outside voice ready.
What are the safety measures for students that participate in swim and tennis? And once again, as far as the safety measures, here are the main guidelines, is that we maintain a safe distance from one another, that we are sanitizing anything that we touch, anything that we bring close to us, that we are sanitizing. As far as swim, and obviously kids are not going to swim with masks on, and it's all about how they access the facility, sanitizing before and after, and not being close to other students. Those are all the safety measures that coaches will be responsible for. But I know, Coach, you want to stand up?
Yes, ma'am.
Add some more to that.
Just like strength camp, we'll have hand sanitizer and other things available, so the coaches have to check in the students for the contract tracing for before and after school. And as soon as they get there, they'll hand sanitize, they'll check in. We do have some cleaners that we have ordered as well from our equipment companies that we can spray down the sports equipment and help take care of them. And then the masks will be required when they are not exercising, or they're in the weight room, their partner is lifting, they can pull their mask down and they can do the exercise. The partner that is not lifting, they can wear the mask and take care of each other and still keep the proper distancing as well. If an athlete has to spot another one in the weight room, they can both wear the mask and be safe, not only from COVID-19, but also the proper weightlifting techniques.
Okay, thank you. How will social distancing in the stands be handled during football, basketball, et cetera, games? So once again, the stands will be marked. As a matter of fact, the football stands are already marked because we marked them for graduation, and we didn't remove the markers. So you've got the 6 foot distance pieces in place, and you've got places where family units can sit together, and then you've got the 6 foot markers. So as far as the high school stadium, that's ready to go. And I know our security people have also been busy marking up the gym and putting in those safety distance markers. We're only going to sell 50% of the capacity tickets, or allow 50% entrance. And then once people get in, people have to take responsibility for watching the markers and safely separate themselves. So we're not going to have the separation police in the gyms or in the football stands. That's going to be part of the contract that you agree to following when you come to an event, that you're going to wear your mask, that you're going to sanitize, and that you're going to maintain a safe distance from other people at that event. And if you cannot follow those guidelines, then we will just kindly escort the student out, or someone who cannot follow those guidelines. Will seniors be able to paint their parking spots? I'm sure they can. I don't know, I can't see Mr. Christian, but if he'll give me a thumbs up, I'm sure that is still going to be in place.
I just responded in the chat that yes, once we return to in-person learning, then that won't be a problem.
Yes, thank you. I guess the school needs better Wi-Fi. Yes.
We have a glitch in the office,
Yeah.
and I just texted Mr. Christian, because the taxpayers have been very gracious to help us invest in new equipment and upgrading the high school, and we did that last spring. So rest assured, we're, except for the occasional work order issue, we'll get Mr. Christian online as quickly as possible, but his kids are going to have really good coverage this year.
Okay.
Right, it's great in the classrooms. It's just in the office where it's not working.
Okay. Thank you.
You just got to taught how to use a computer.
We just got Mr. Christian to switch over to one of the newer computers. He held on to, he says, this one works, does everything I needed to. We could not take that thing away from him.
Still has an iPhone 4.
Yeah. He uses an iPhone 4, but he'll tell you it does what I needed to do. Yeah. How will the athletic teams travel to out-of-town games?
Well, all of the buses have already had standardized seating arrangements. So just like 2 per seat, we'll have that as well. And whenever we're in meetings or together, as long as they're not exercising, the coaches want to keep the kids safe, and they'll be masked up on the bus. And each middle school coordinator or head coach at the high school will have the ability to communicate to the parents if the parents after the game want to take the student athlete home. And so they'll go through those policies and those procedures if you want to take one less trip. But we will travel to the game together, go get that win, and of course make adjustments after the game.
Thank you, sir. If opening the school for in-person learning is pushed back, do we have an idea when the start date will be? If so, will this cause a disruption in classes and schedules? So again, we hope to make a decision on August the 20th. We could extend virtual learning for 2 weeks. The most that we could extend it would be 4 weeks. So those are our 2 options. If so, will this cause a disruption in schedules? No, because however we start on the 18th with the 100% virtual instruction, if we extend it, that mode continues with the current assignments and the current teachers. Will the classrooms use air purifiers?
We will have some HEPA-style air purifiers for classrooms that you find in portable buildings and in very small confined spaces. But our general method for managing air quality falls back on what is required of us today, which is to use fresh air as part of the mix and the mechanics behind maintaining what we call indoor air quality. And one of the really nice benefits of our recent bond investments that we've made is we've gone through and upgraded a lot of our air handlers all throughout the school district. And so besides increasing the frequency of fresh air that we're going to mix in with the conditioned air, the standards that we follow today, which are known as ASHRAE, will move the air appropriately. And in talking with our engineers and our other districts in the surrounding area, we believe this will be highly effective in helping to be one of those things that we can do to mitigate the spread of COVID. But certainly in, say, practice rooms where band students are going to be doing sectionals, or if you're going to be in a portable building such as ROTC, we will have those air purifiers that will work in conjunction with the sanitation and the other means and methods that we're going to have for preventing and also mitigating the spread of this particular disease.
Okay, thank you. Will the library be open? Yes, it will. Once we get back to in-person, the library will be open. If for any reason a student must be quarantined, will this affect their attendance? If the student can continue to do their work from home during the quarantine and show progress, they will receive credit not just for their work, but for their attendance. Dr. Sermani, you want to add?
Yeah, that's the key point in the new TEA guidelines. So if you think about it, if the student is absent for any reason, whether they're sick or doctor's appointment, anything, as long as they log in and continue to do their work and turn it in before 11:59 p.m., they can be counted present. So that's the key indicator there. Are they accomplishing the tasks and completing the work? Okay.
Great, thank you. All right, it is 6:34, folks. I'm going to do a couple more, and then I promise. I think we've gone through most of them. But if there's any key questions that are not on the FAQ, we'll make sure that we include them there. So if
this has been recorded and it'll be uploaded to our.
Okay, fantastic. So yes, it is being recorded and it'll be uploaded to our COVID-19 return to school information. If the games will be limited for capacity, will viewing it virtually be an option? Yes. And we're not going to charge you for it. Like, it's not a pay-per-view. You'll be able to watch it from home.
Oh, it might be.
Oh, there might be a charge. Oh, okay, I take that back. I'm so sorry. But again, those are all logistics that we're working on, and we will get that information out to you. Yes, but the live streaming is something we're investigating.
Yeah, UIL, normally on a Friday night, UIL does not let schools stream games. You can only do audio, but this year they're making an exception because they know that schools are going to be reduced capacity.
Yeah. What will the lunch menu be like? It will be modified. I will tell you that our cafeteria manager is working on the menu, but a lot of the food will be served in those closed containers. So a lot of the choices that we've had in the past will be limited until we can get to a safer status health-wise. Dr. Shamani, for dual credit students, can they take those classes from home instead of the high school if they have their own transportation?
Yes, Mr. Christian answered that one just a little bit further down about that. So yes, they can.
Okay, very good. And I think he answered the one about the permits too. When can they get parking permits? When we're ready to return to in-person instruction, he will send out that information. Okay, last one. If an in-person student is required to quarantine, will they be moved to virtual classes until they're allowed to return? Will they have different teachers? No, they won't have a different teacher during the quarantine period. They'll continue to do their work that they were doing in person. That communication will come from the teacher that they have assigned. Okay, thank you all so much for joining us. We've enjoyed this time with you. I realize it's one way, but if we can clarify and reduce any anxiety that you may have about coming back to school or us starting school, then we've accomplished our job. We wish you the very best. Enjoy the next few days of summer, and we hope to see your kids at least virtually, and we really look forward to seeing them in person whenever that comes to be. So appreciate all your support. Thank you for encouraging us and working alongside us, because it does take a partnership to take care of all our kiddos. Have a great night, and thank you for joining us.
Coach, Ms. Wiley had sent me a couple of YMCA